Tonight we pause. Across borders, across stages, across generations, three names leave echoes that will not fade easily. One commanded fear and power in the shadows of crime. One filled radios and hearts with melodies that refused to age. One stood beneath Broadway lights and helped build the golden age of American theater. Their paths could not have been more different, yet each shaped history in their own unmistakable way. Tragic news was confirmed this week as Nemesio Rubén Oseguera Cervantes, known across the world as El Mencho, was reported dead. Authorities released the statement quietly, but the impact was immediate. For years, his name had stood at the center of one of the largest manhunts in North America. Born in a small rural community in Michoacán, Mexico, Oseguera grew up in poverty. His early life was far from the world headlines he would later dominate. He worked in agriculture as a young man. Like many seeking opportunity, he crossed into the United States in the 1980s, hoping for a better future, but that future took a different path. After facing arrest and deportation, he returned to Mexico. It was there that he entered the world of organized crime. He became involved with the Mencho cartel, learning the structure and operations of the drug trade. When leaders were arrested or killed, power shifted, and slowly Oseguera began to rise. In time, he formed what would become known as the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. Under his command, the group expanded rapidly. It built networks that reportedly stretched across continents. Authorities described it as one of the fastest-growing and most dangerous criminal organizations in the world. Violence marked its expansion. Public displays of force, armed convoys, and deadly confrontations with rival groups became part of its reputation. Mexican security forces often found themselves in direct conflict with the cartel. Communities in certain regions lived under constant fear. The United States government placed a reward of up to $10 million for information leading to his capture. Mexican authorities added their own reward. Together, it became one of the highest bounties ever offered for a fugitive in the region. For years, he remained elusive. Officials described him as highly strategic and deeply protected. Each failed attempt to capture him only increased his legend. His name became a symbol of the growing power of modern cartels in the 21st century. A spokesperson from Mexico's security cabinet once said, "His organization represents one of the greatest security challenges facing our country." Across social media, reactions to news of his death were divided. Some expressed relief. Others reflected on the long and violent chapter that defined his rule. A resident from Jalisco shared in a public post, "For years, his name meant fear in our streets. Maybe now there will be peace." Yet beyond the headlines and rewards, there was also a human story. He was a son of rural Mexico, a man who rose from hardship into power, though through a path that left deep scars on communities. His life became part of a larger narrative about poverty, migration, crime, and opportunity lost. Experts often pointed to his rise as a sign of how organized crime had evolved. Cartels were no longer hidden in shadows alone. They operated with advanced weapons, global connections, and bold public messaging. In many ways, his leadership marked a shift in how these groups functioned. The cost of that shift was heavy. Families mourned loved ones lost in violence. Security forces faced dangerous missions. Entire regions struggled with instability. His name became linked not just to power, but to pain. As news of his passing spread, governments reaffirmed their commitment to fighting organized crime. A U.S. official stated, "This chapter may be closing, but the work to restore safety continues." His death does not erase the past. It does not undo the harm or the fear. But it closes a long and intense pursuit that shaped law enforcement efforts for more than a decade. History will likely remember Nemesio Rubén Oseguera Cervantes as one of the most powerful cartel leaders of his era. A man who built an empire in the shadows. A figure who forced nations to respond with unprecedented coordination and resources. For some, his name will remain a warning. For others, a reminder of how complex and painful the fight against organized crime can be. In the quiet hills of Michoacán, where his life began, the story has come full circle. From rural fields to international headlines, his journey was marked by ambition, secrecy, and conflict. Now, the pursuit has ended, and as communities reflect on the years defined by his influence, many hope that what follows will be different. That stability may replace fear, that future generations will choose another path. In the end, His life stands as a powerful example of how choices shape destiny, not only for one man, but for countless others touched by those choices. The shadow he cast was long, but even the longest shadows fade with time. The music felt a little quieter this week as news spread that Neil Sedaka had passed away. The announcement was simple and respectful, but for many, it felt deeply personal. His voice had been part of their childhood, their first love, their long car rides, and their quiet evenings at home. He was 87. Born in Brooklyn, New York, Neil Sedaka showed musical talent at a very young age. He studied classical piano and trained with discipline. Teachers noticed his gift early, but it was not long before he turned toward popular music, where his melodies would soon find millions of listeners. In the late 1950s, his career began to rise. His bright voice and heartfelt lyrics stood out during the golden age of doo-wop and early rock and roll. Songs like Oh, Carol became instant hits. Teenagers across America played his records on repeat. He had a rare ability. He could write a melody that felt simple, yet stayed in the heart for years. Throughout the early 1960s, he continued to release hit after hit. Calendar Girl. Breaking Up is Hard to Do. Each song carried a gentle honesty. His music spoke about love, heartbreak, and hope in a way that felt real and easy to understand. But like many artists of his time, he faced change. As musical trends shifted in the late 1960s, his popularity slowed in the United States. For some, that might have marked the end. For Neil Sedaka, it became a new beginning. He kept writing, he kept performing, he refused to give up on the music that shaped his life. In the 1970s, he made a powerful comeback. With songs like Laughter in the Rain, he returned to the top of the charts. His sound matured, but the warmth remained. A new generation discovered his voice, while longtime fans welcomed him back with open arms. Music critics praised his resilience. One fellow songwriter once said, "Neil understood melody in a way very few people ever will." Behind the fame, he remained known as kind and professional. Friends described him as thoughtful and deeply devoted to his craft. He often spoke about his love for songwriting, calling it a gift that never stopped giving. After news of his passing, tributes began to pour in. A family statement shared, "Neil's greatest joy was knowing his songs brought happiness to others. He felt blessed every time someone sang along." On social media, one fan wrote, "His music was the soundtrack of my teenage years. Thank you for the memories." Another tribute simply read, "Legends never truly leave us. They live in their songs." Throughout his long career, Neil Sedaka sold millions of records worldwide. He performed on stages across continents. Yet he never lost touch with the simple joy of sitting at a piano and writing a new tune. His music crossed generations. Parents played his songs for their children. Grandparents shared stories of school dances where his voice filled the room. His melodies became woven into family memories, celebrations, and quiet moments alike. In interviews, he often spoke about gratitude. He believed music was meant to connect people, and for decades, that is exactly what he did. Even in his later years, he continued to perform. Audiences would rise to their feet as soon as the first notes played. There was comfort in hearing that familiar voice. There was peace in knowing some things never changed. His passing marks the end of a remarkable era in American pop music. But it also reminds the world of the power of song. Simple words, a steady piano, a heartfelt voice. That was his magic. Neil Sedaka leaves behind not just awards or chart records, but something far more lasting. He leaves melodies that still echo through living rooms and car radios. He leaves lyrics that still speak to young hearts discovering love for the first time. In homes around the world tonight, his songs will play once more. Not in sadness alone, but in gratitude. Because while a voice may grow silent, the music it created continues on. And in every note of, "Oh, Carol," in every gentle line of "Laughter in the Rain," his spirit will remain, steady, warm, and forever singing. The lights of Broadway felt softer this week as news was confirmed that Sandra Lee had passed away. The announcement came with quiet dignity. For many in the theater world, it marked the closing of a treasured chapter. She was a performer shaped by discipline, passion, and deep respect for the stage. Born with a love for music and movement, Sandra Lee trained seriously from a young age. She studied dance and acting with focus and care. Those early lessons would guide her for decades. The stage was not just a workplace for her, it was home. Her breakthrough came during Broadway's golden era. She appeared in the original production of Peter Pan, a show that captured the hearts of families across America. Night after night, she stepped into a world of imagination and wonder. Audiences watched in awe as the story unfolded beneath bright theater lights. In time, she would also grace the stage in Hello, Dolly, one of the most beloved musicals of its time. Her presence was graceful yet strong. Fellow performers often spoke of her professionalism. She brought calm energy into every rehearsal, one former cast member once shared. When Sandra was on stage, you felt safe. Broadway in the mid-20th century was demanding. Performers worked long hours. There were no second takes, no digital edits. Every note, every step, every line had to be perfect in the moment. Sandra Lee understood that pressure. She respected it. She embraced it. And she delivered performances that audiences remembered long after the curtain fell. Beyond the spotlight, she was known for kindness. Younger actors often turned to her for advice. She believed in helping others grow. In interviews, she spoke about the importance of honoring the craft of live theater. Broadway is about trust, she once said. You trust your cast. I trust the story. And you trust the audience to feel something real. As years passed, she remained connected to the arts. Even as new generations stepped onto the stage, her influence lingered. She represented a time when musicals were built brick by brick, through hard work, live orchestras, and shared breath between actors and audience. When news of her passing spread, tributes flowed from across the theater community. A Broadway director wrote online, "Sandra Lee stood for excellence. She reminded us why live performance matters." Another admirer shared, "She was part of a golden age that we will never forget." Her life reflected more than a list of roles. It reflected dedication. She helped shape the sound and style of American musical theater during a time when Broadway was reaching homes across the country. Families traveled to New York to see shows like Peter Pan and Hello, Dolly. They dressed up for the evening. They held playbills in their hands. And somewhere on that stage, Sandra Lee helped bring stories to life. Theater historians often speak of that era with warmth. It was a time when musicals blended heart, humor, and hope. Performers like her gave everything to each performance, knowing that live art exists only in the moment it is shared. Her passing feels like the dimming of a classic marquee, yet her work remains alive in recordings, photographs, and the memories of those who saw her perform. It lives on in the standards she set and the example she gave to others. In a world that moves quickly, her career reminds us of something steady. The power of preparation, the beauty of discipline, the magic of standing beneath warm lights and telling a story with honesty. As the curtain falls on her remarkable life, the applause continues in spirit. Because performers like Sandra Lee do not truly fade. They remain in the echo of songs sung on Broadway stages. They remain in the quiet excitement before a show begins. They remain in every young actor who steps forward with courage and grace. And so tonight, as theater lights glow once more in Times Square, her legacy stands among them, timeless, elegant, and forever part of Broadway's golden story.